So, in question 5, we just answered. There was a 4-part question. Where did John see the woman? He saw her according to the book of Revelation, chapter 12, verse 1. John saw her in heaven. She was clothed with the sun. She was standing on the moon. And upon her head she had a crown of 12 stars. These, of course, are symbolic meanings. Let's see if we can't help break this down using the Bible to help find where this is at. Let's go to Genesis chapter 1, very beginning of the Bible. Genesis chapter 1, we're going to look at verse 20. Because it says that this woman, John saw this woman in heaven. Well, what part of heaven was John in vision seeing her at? Genesis chapter 1, verse 20 gives us the answer. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life, and fowl, or bird, that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. So in this symbolic meaning in Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, when John says that he saw her in heaven, he's talking about the sky. That's what he's talking about. And if we move along, where he says that she was clothed with the sun, well, the sun represents Jesus and his righteousness. Let's make sure. Let's go to the Bible. Let's go to the book of Psalms. And we're going to go to Psalms 84. And we're going to look at verse 11. Let's see what the sun symbolically means. For the Lord God is a sun and shield. For the Lord God is a sun and a shield. Jesus says that he is the light of the world. Sun is so bright, full of light. Let's go and get a New Testament answer here. Let's go to the book of John, chapter 9, and let's go to verse 5. John chapter 9, verse 5. This is Jesus speaking. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So this woman, pictured in Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, is clothed with the sun. The sun represents Jesus Christ. It also represents the New Testament. The woman represents the church. Next, John sees her standing on the moon. The moon has no light except that reflected from the sun. It represents the Old Testament sacrificial system, which had no light except that reflected from the Gospels. Let's go to the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 1. Let's see if this is true. For the law, now the law can be found in the Old Testament, Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 17. For the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices, which they offered year by year continually, make the comers thereunto perfect. The moon that she's standing on represents the law of God. Law we talked about in the Old Testament, talked about the mercy seat, how what's inside or under the mercy seat is the law of God. God stands and sits on his law. He goes by his law. The moon represents the Old Testament, which has the law of God. And you see the woman standing on the moon. That means this church, God's true church, has Jesus Christ wrapped in it, and it has the teachings of Jesus Christ, not man's, and it has the law of God, and it teaches the law of God. The fourth thing, John said that he saw a crown of 12 stars upon her head. The crown of 12 stars represents the work of the 12 disciples, which crowned the early years of the church. Let's go and find out. Matthew chapter 10. We're going to go to the book of Matthew, the Gospels. We're going to look at chapter 10, and we're going to look at verses 1 through 4. See if these 12 stars on the crown of the woman represents the work of the 12 disciples. As we find in the book of Matthew chapter 10, verses 1 through 4, it says, "And when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, he gave them power against unclean spirits, to cast them out and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these. The first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the publican, James the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus." And it goes on, "Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed Jesus," betrayed him. So, does the 12 stars represent the 12 disciples and the work that they did do? According to the book of Matthew, chapter 1, according to the book of Matthew, chapter 10, verses 1 through 4, yes, it does. So therefore, this woman that we see pictured in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, this woman is a church. She is clothed with the sun of the light, or the light of the sun, which is Jesus Christ, and which means this church has the teachings of Jesus Christ, and the teachings of Jesus Christ is the testimony of Jesus Christ, which is the spirit of prophecy. We also see that this woman is standing on the moon. The moon represents the Old Testament. What do we find in the Old Testament? We find the law of God. That means that this church, this woman, found in Revelation chapter 12, verse 1 through 17, that this woman must be a true church. She has to have the teachings of Jesus Christ. She has to have the testimony, which is the spirit of prophecy of Jesus Christ. It has to have the teachings and foundations of the law of God, the Ten Commandments, found in Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 17. And it has to be all 10. It can't be just 9 or omit one of them and break another one in half. It has to be all 10 as God wrote them in stone. And it also has to have the teachings and the backings of the 12 disciples and the great work that they did do. This is how you can help identify God's true church today. Since the sun and the moon make a complete whole, this symbolism represents the sum total of the church in history. The church before the cross and the church after the cross. The church before the cross would be the Old Testament. The church after the cross would be the New Testament. You cannot have the old without the new. You cannot have the new without the old. If you claim to be a New Testament follower only, you're false and you're worshiping Satan, because that's not the ways or the teachings of the Bible. And you can quote me on that, because I go by the Bible. Question 6, moving along. What next takes place in this great prophecy of God's church? Let's go find out in the book of Revelation chapter 12. Let's go to Revelation chapter 12, and we're going to look at verses 2 and verse 5. What next takes place in this great prophecy of God's church? Revelation chapter 12, verses 2 and 5 read. And she, now here's the woman again, this is talking about a church. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. Now obviously a child comes from this church, this woman. As far as I know, there's only been one great child that has come from a church. His name was Jesus Christ. Let's take a look at verse 5. And she brought forth a man-child. Talking about the woman, the church. She brought forth a man-child. That man-child was Jesus Christ, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child, Jesus Christ, was caught up unto God and to his throne. Do we not know that from the Bible, according to the Bible, that Jesus ascended to the Father, and that he is now on the right hand of God the Father? That's biblical teaching. So this woman, or this church, brought forth a man-child, which means a great leader come from this church. And it came through Jesus Christ. He was this great leader. He also ascended up to heaven, to the throne of God. So a child is born into the church. The child is later caught up to God's throne. Question 7. Who is this baby who is destined to rule all nations and who ascended to heaven? Let's find out. Because we don't want to take just my opinion on it. We want to know what the Bible has to say. Because I just gave you my opinion, but we're going to let the Bible do the talking too. We're going to let the Bible tell us. We're going to go to the book of Psalms, and we're going to go to Psalms chapter 2, verses 7 through 9. And it reads, I will declare the decree. The Lord has said unto me, you are my son. This day have I begotten you. Ask of me, and I will give you the heathen for your inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. You will break them with a rod of iron. You will dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Let's not just take the book of Psalms for this. Let's go to, the book of Revelation chapter 19. We're going to go to the book of Revelation chapter 19, and we're going to read verses 13 through 16. Let's find out who this little child is that is found in the book of Revelation chapter 12. We're going to read now from Revelation chapter 19, verses 13 through 16. This will help clarify. Once again, we're getting our information from the Bible. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron. And he treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. And he had on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Who is this child? Jesus Christ. But let's not just take the book of Psalms and the book of Revelation. Let's go to the book of Acts chapter 1. Let's see what the Apostle Paul and Luke have to tell us here. Because Luke co-authored to write the book of Acts. Acts chapter 1 verses 9 through 11. And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, talking about the disciples, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, You men of Galilee, why stand you gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, which is taken up from you into heaven, will so come in like manner as you have seen him go into heaven. So, who's this child speaking about in Revelation chapter 12, verse 5? Who's this child that comes from this woman who is symbolized as the church? Jesus. It is Jesus Christ. I'm hoping this helps you to better understand that in the book of Revelation chapter 12, the whole chapter 12 is talking about a church, the woman. The child that she delivers is Jesus Christ. He comes forth. And then Jesus has ascended to the heaven, to God's throne. Now we have the book of Psalms, we have the book of Revelation, and we have the book of Acts, biblically backing that up. Now we're going to get into the great red dragon. Question 8. A great red dragon is next pictured. Who is this dragon? Where did he come from? Now this is a two-part question, two-part answer. Let's go to Revelation chapter 12. And let's read more of chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12. We're going to read verses 7 through 9. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. And the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So, where did he come from? He came from heaven. He was cast out of heaven. Who is this dragon?
Satan.
Satan. This great dragon in chapter 12 of Revelation is Satan. Satan tried to destroy. He even tried to destroy Moses because he thought Moses was Jesus coming to save the world. He tried to destroy Moses. Satan tried. Every time that there was supposed to be a leader, a great leader here on earth, or a deliverer, Satan always tried to get rid of it. And as you heard me read at the beginning of this lesson, it talks about how the dragon was wroth with the woman and it went to devour her child. And we're going to get into a little bit more of that here in a little bit. Question 9. When the devil left heaven, bring with him? And what did he try to do to the child? We're going to stay in the book of Revelation chapter 12. We're going to read verses 3 and 4. Now remember, we found that the dragon is Satan in Revelation chapter 12. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. There he is, that's Satan. Having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now that's symbolic. He doesn't really have 7 heads. He doesn't really have 10 horns. Those have meanings. And 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, if you remember, when Jesus was born, the 3 wise men went to Herod and said that they followed a star that foretold the coming of the Son of Christ, Son of God. And King Herod said, well, go forth, and if this be true, come back and bring me word that I too may worship him or serve him. But it was actually a trick, because Satan was working through Herod. The wise men went, they journeyed to Bethlehem, they found Jesus, born in a manger, wrapped in swaddling clothes. An angel appeared unto the 3 wise men and told them not to go back and tell Herod. So they did not. They took a different path back to their homeland. The next thing that happened was that Herod made a decree that every newborn male, every newborn boy up to the age of 2 years old was to be killed. Because Herod did not want a leader or a king coming up around him. He was scared. He was terrified. He was jealous. He was the king. He didn't want no one else being king. So he sent forth a decree, every male child 2 years and younger to be killed. Satan tried to get rid of Jesus. He tried to devour him. Joseph and Mary were forewarned by an angel. And even Joseph and Mary fled to Egypt. There's 2 events that were predicted by Old Testament prophets. You can find Jeremiah chapter 31 verse 15, and the other one, Hosea chapter 11 verse 1. Though the dragon represents Satan, it also has a secondary application to pagan Rome. Herod was a Roman ruler whom Satan used to try to kill Jesus at birth. A beast normally represents a kingdom or political power. Let's go find out. Let's find out from the Bible. We're going to go to the book of Daniel. We're going to go to chapter 7. We're going to read verse 23. Because this is where we're going to find out another symbolic term. Daniel chapter 7 verse 23 reads, Thus he said, the 4th beast will be the 4th kingdom upon earth, which will be different from all kingdoms and will devour the whole earth and will tread it down and break it in pieces. So symbolically speaking, a beast represents what?
A kingdom.
A kingdom. A beast represents kingdom. You know how different countries have different animals for their that represents their country. United States, we have the bald eagle. That would be considered a beast in biblical terms. Question 10. What outstanding and extremely crucial facts are mentioned in Revelation chapter 12, verses 10 through 12? Well, let's take a look. Revelation chapter 12, verses 10 through 12 reads, "And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death." Verse 12. "Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has but a short time." So the great red dragon, who is Satan, who is the devil, who was cast out of heaven because he made war in heaven, he was cast down to the earth to tempt us all. We are the inhabitants, we humans. Satan will trick, deceive, do whatever he can to get you not. He will do anything he can to get you to not listen to the Word of God. He will give you excuses. Oh, I can't go tonight. Oh, I can't watch this video tonight. I have some